Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Hardie-Matthews, and I'm the Training and Enablement Manager at Workbooks. Some of you, I can see some familiar names that are coming up on the attendee list and some that I don't know, but welcome to everybody. Also on the session, you might not hear her, but my colleague from the marketing team, Ruth, is on the line, and she's keeping an eye on any questions that are coming in. Hopefully you're all here because you want to find out a bit more about the most recent release that we've had, the Workbooks summer release. It came out not the Saturday just gone, but the preceding one. So hopefully you've had a bit of a chance to try out some of the new functionality and the changes. This release, in common with the one that came out in March, and actually the one that we're due to release in the autumn, the focus at the moment is all about enhancements to the user interface. So today I'm going to give you an overview of those changes to make sure that you're able to take advantage of them, really. In terms of the topics that we're going to be looking at, there are 5 main topics, and I'm going to show you 4 of them. I know the arrangement of that screen looks a little bit odd, but it will make sense in a moment, hopefully. The one I'm not going to show you in any way, shape or form is the one in the bottom right-hand corner because it's not demonstrable. The fact that IE11 is being deprecated, I can't show you that, obviously, but I wanted to include it on the slide as a reminder to anybody that might still be using that browser that you are going to need to think about moving to another browser of your choice, but obviously not IE11. That's not us deprecating it, that's Microsoft, but it will impact Workbooks. So have a think about that. Hopefully it doesn't apply to too many of you. During the next half an hour, 40 minutes or so, if you have questions as we go, then please post them into the question area. I'll do my best to incorporate the responses as we go if I spot them, but if I'm looking at another screen, I might not quite see them. But there will be an open forum for questions at the end. The session itself is being recorded. For those of you who've attended these things before, you'll know that you will receive a copy of the recording in the next day or so. So let's have a think about what the release topics are. In respect of the desktop, we've introduced some new functionality around managing the records that you see on your desktop, along with making some more space on the screen, in particular on landing pages and dashboards. The left-hand menu it's always been collapsible, but we've made it easier to collapse it and then re-show it. If any of you read the sneaky peek bulletin that we sent out to all users towards the end of May regarding this release, you hopefully saw the video that was included in it, which showed the new Windows Manager functionality. And I'll show you that real time when we go into Workbooks in a couple of minutes. In terms of activities, this is probably one of the more, I wouldn't describe it quite as major changes we've made, but one of the more significant changes in this release. We've introduced a way to make it easier to create the next activity in a series that you want to do when you've made one call perhaps and there's an action that you need to take. Hopefully you're all familiar with the existing complete button on activities. There's a complete, and when you click on it you can create a complete and follow-on activity or a complete and follow-on meeting and that kind of thing. That functionality is still there. We haven't taken that away, so if you're used to using that, you should be hopefully reassured by that. But there is now a new way to make activity management easier and quicker. I think it will probably be of particular interest to people who are in an inside sales role where they maybe have to make quite a high volume of calls in quite a quick succession, maybe BDRs, that kind of role. So there are 2 new fields available on activities. As you can see on the slide deck, it says there's one called outcome and there's one called next steps. We haven't shipped with these shown by default. So if you're thinking, well, I haven't seen those, that's because we haven't put them onto tasks by default. But if you're a system administrator, or you can speak nicely to your system administrator, you can get these fields added to the activity record and you can start to use them. And I'll show you what they do. It's easier to show than talk about really when we go into the product itself. For the marketeers on the call, we've made it easier to track online activities that originate from Google or Bing searches. So it'll make it a bit easier for you to be able to report on organic web activity alongside activities that are just created from your regular marketing campaigns. It's quite easy to do, but again, I'll just show you how. And then this fourth topic, forms. We've made a variety of changes to forms. Really, the aim is to make them a bit cleaner, a bit easier to use. The first bullet point there, the save and close button. We've made it possible, if you want to, you don't have to, but we've made it possible to combine those two buttons into one. It's a kind of split button. So you can choose whether it defaults to save when you click on it, or use the drop down and click save and close, or vice versa, default to save and close and use the drop down and just choose save. Again, probably easier to see than to describe. But we haven't made those changes for you. You'd have to switch that on if you want to use that functionality. Whereas with button name shortening throughout the product, and you may have noticed some of these things over the last week or so that you've been using the new release, we've shortened the names on a lot of the buttons across the top of records. And in some instances, not many, but in one or two, we've also changed the icon. But as you'll see when we look at it, it should all be very self-explanatory. It shouldn't be a big shock to the system. We've also made some improvements to the email form. We've removed some of the clutter, really. We've made it tidier and therefore made more space for the important bit of the email, which is where you send your message. Again, I'll show you that on a slide shortly. For system administrators, we've given you more control over the appearance of forms in terms of their dimension. So you'll be able to set the default height and width of a form if you choose to. You don't have to, but if you want to go in and make some changes, you can. And then that final bullet point before the bit about IE11, memberships. If you use memberships within Workbooks, so I'm talking here about things like event attendees, campaign members, mailing list members, that sort of thing, we've now made it possible to create form layouts for these. And the knock-on effect of being able to create form layouts is that if you want to have different form layouts for different types of members, you can. Again, you don't have to, but it's there for you to do if you choose to. Sorry, I just noticed someone was having trouble with the volume, but hopefully they can hear me. So I have just switched into Workbooks. As you can see across the top, it's a demonstration version of Workbooks. In fact, let me see if I can just make that a little bit bigger. That doesn't want to change though I wanted it to, not to worry. So you can see on here that I've got lots of different records open on the screen, and you've probably done exactly the same yourself from time to time. It's one of the advantages of Workbooks that you can have multiple records open at any one time. You might be busy working on one particular thing and somebody calls in and you want to bring their record up onto the screen, and you can without having to close the thing that you were working on. So it can be a really useful bit of functionality. However, if you're anything like me, you can sometimes find yourself with so many records open and one's minimized in your system tray that it can get a bit difficult to really see the wood for the trees. So we've introduced a new button. It's these four little squares next to one another, and if I hover over it, it says Manage Open Windows. It'll be near your Start button. Hopefully you're all using the modern interface rather than the classic, but even if you're using classic, it will be just next to that Start button. When I click on it, you can see what happens. It spreads out the records onto the screen so I can actually see what's going on and what records I've got open. If I, for instance, just open this one. So obviously you can't exactly see what I'm doing, but I clicked on the Atlantic Computer Services organization record. It's restored all the windows back, but it's brought the one I clicked on to the front. So again, if I, in fact, let me just minimize that Atlantic Computer Services for a moment. I'm going to go back and use the same Manage Open Windows button. And you can see that this time, Atlantic Computer Services, the organization record that I had open previously, because I minimized it, it now appears at the bottom of the screen, whereas at the top are all the records that were open on the screen before, the four that were open. Hopefully it's fairly intuitive that if you wanted to close one down completely, you would just click on the cross. And the other thing to mention is that once you've done this, once you've got your Windows Manager enabled as it is, if you just want to go back to how the records were set out before, simply click on the blurred, the grayed out area, and it will just go back to how it was before. So hopefully that makes sense. In addition to the Windows Manager itself, we've now got the ability to what we describe as snapping records either to the left or the right of your screen. If I go to the icon menu in the top left-hand corner and click on it, you can see we've got the snap to left and the snap to right functionality. I'll click on the snap to right just because that's what I've got open. And now, in conjunction with that Windows Manager functionality, you get the record snapped as you wanted, but you also get to see what else was on your screen at the time. So I'll just return these, and maybe if I want this dashboard snapping to the left, click on the icon at the top, snap to the left. I'm really finding this quite useful over the last few days that I've been using Workbooks, because I've previously found myself readjusting the size of records to try and get them to fit on the screen. But this makes it much easier because I just snap the records and it does it for me. Okay. If you want to unsnap, simply just drag. That's not snapped anymore, and neither is that opportunity. So hopefully that kind of thing is fairly self-explanatory. Let me open this dashboard. I'm going to maximize it. It's a dashboard. You may have similar looking things on your environment. I'm sure they'll have different figures in, but you can see we've now got this show the menu. It looks almost like a little door. It's a toggle on, toggle off button that will show the left-hand menu or close it down. So hide it, hover over it, show it. We've still got, for those of you who are used to using it, there is a tiny little arrow halfway down that menu. That's still there and it does exactly the same thing. It's just that it's not very obvious. So we've made it a little bit easier for folks to see how they can collapse the left-hand menu. Now, this is a dashboard, and just to be really clear, the way we've shipped with dashboards is that the left-hand menu is hidden. So when you open up any dashboard now, the left-hand menu will be hidden, but if you want to invoke it, just click on this button. The other thing just to mention, in case you didn't know about it, in fact, it'll be easier if I show you it on a landing page, so I'll show you that in a moment. Let me open the sales opportunities landing page, doesn't really matter which one. But a landing page, same concept, it's got this left-hand menu and it's got the hide and show menu buttons. So that's there just the same as it is on a dashboard. What you can do, I've obviously hidden the menu there. If you're used to creating views and saving them, if I just click on save as, and I'm just going to say hidden, you'd obviously give it a better name than that, but to illustrate my point. And I'm going to close down the landing page and reopen it. Sales opportunities. And by default, it opens my opportunities, so the menu is showing on the left-hand side. But here's my hidden view, and if I click on it to invoke it, it opens up with the menu, the left-hand menu hidden. So it's a small thing, but it's worth you knowing that however you save a view with the menu showing or not showing, it will remember that on landing pages. Dashboards, the menu will always be hidden until you click on the show button. But the bit that I said I wanted to show you when I was here as well, if you use the icon menu at the top, we've got the snap to left and right, which is fine. But what a lot of people, this isn't new functionality that I'm showing you right now, but a lot of people don't realize it's there. If I go to views, I get all those views that we normally see in that left-hand menu. So if you didn't want to actually open the menu, but did want to change the view, let's go to all open opportunities, that is another way to do it. And that one was saved with the menu showing on the left-hand side. So hopefully that makes sense. It's a small thing, but it's just about ease of use really, and navigating around the system, and particularly about saving space. Let me close everything down. Again, not new functionality, but in case you didn't know it was there, the close all windows button can be really helpful. You can use it from the left-hand side there, or actually you can close all other windows from the icon there, but I want to close everything. So I'm going to use the one on the left-hand side. Okay. I just want to show you the changes that we've made to activity records. So I'm going to go to my activities landing page. I've just got 5 activities to carry out in this database. And you can see the top one, it's due today, the 26th of June, call to introduce myself to Alan Whitehead. So imagine it is my job to do that. So I'm going to open this up. And the record may look slightly different from the way that you've got your tasks laid out, but it'll look similar. But what I've done in this particular database is that I have switched on these 2 new fields that I mentioned, the outcome and the next steps. So imagine I've picked up the phone, I've maybe clicked to dial this number, and I've called Alan and I've had a conversation with him, and he's said, yep, great, love the sound of what you're talking about, but call me back, I'm too busy right now. So you would normally, as a salesperson or someone following up a case or following up booking things for marketing campaigns and that kind of thing, you would make some notes in here. So I'll just add your notes here so that you can remember next time what you said. But you want to create a follow-on activity. So we've got these 2 new fields. They are pick lists. Obviously, you can control the values in the pick lists. These are just some suggestions. If you don't like them, you can start from scratch. You can use some of the ones we've suggested, or because these are unrestricted pick lists, you can just type in values. I would suggest that you try and use pick lists though, in case you want to do any reporting, so you've got some regular values that you can report on rather than just what somebody's typed in. So I'll say interest, call back later. And then next steps, as I say, I'll just show you the pick list that is in here. You can modify this. So I could just choose follow up, but for now, I'm just going to type something in, call later this week. And if you notice there, actually, it was saying that nothing matched my query because what it was saying was that value isn't on this pick list, but because it's unrestricted, I can type it in. So that's fine. And if you notice, because I put a value in next steps, we didn't see this field called next due before, but it's magically appeared because we've put some next steps in. And what it's saying is, well, when you do this next task, this next action, when do you need to do it? So let's say I'll do that tomorrow. And when I click save and close, my screen will clear. Because what this is doing is it's silently, if you like, completing the old activity, marking that as complete, and silently, hidden in the background, creating the new activity. Remember, I dated it for tomorrow, and we're now looking at my open activities, and it says call later this week, due tomorrow. That's the activity that's automatically been created for me, if I open it up, by virtue of the fact that on the previous activity, I filled in outcome, next steps, and I filled in the due date as well, the next due date. In addition, what this new functionality has done, if you notice, I said in my next steps, call later this week. The new activity has now got that as the subject. It's taken that and pasted it into the subject of the new activity. Also, down in the description field, there's the bit where I typed in add your notes here. There's also this date stamp, which we've done pretty much forever. So it says I'm logged in as someone called Anthony Khan. So it says that on the 22nd of June, I completed the previous activity. But this row, oops, if I can highlight it for you, that's new. It's telling me the value that was put into the outcome field of the previous action and the value that was put into the next steps of the previous action. So that's in there. The other things, it's still doing what it used to do in terms of if I go to the related items tab, this new activity is related to the previous one. This new activity is related to the primary contact, Alan Whitehead, and therefore it's also associated with Alan's employer, Atlantic Computer Services. And as it happens, I chose an activity that was linked to an opportunity as well. So the new activity is linked to the opportunity. So all those joins are exactly as they used to be. But the key part is that we've got these new fields, if you choose to show them, that will automatically silently create the new activity. So I'll just do that one more time to embed that. So let's imagine that It's tomorrow, it's now Wednesday. I've called Alan again and he loves us and he wants us to send an order. If only sales were that easy, but imagine that it was. So outcome, send information or something, and let's say send order, but I haven't got time to do it that day, so I'll do it the next day so I don't forget. Save and close, and it will close down my last activity, and here we are, the one due on the 24th, send order. So hopefully those of you who are making a lot of particularly calls, but not just calls, will find that really easy to use and quick to use so that you can then move on to the next thing that you're supposed to be doing. So that's activities. Just for completeness, actually, before I move on to the next topic, I'll just open that up. As I mentioned, we've still got the complete button. You can still do a complete and follow-on phone call meeting as you did before. And in fact, let me show you this. If I put an outcome in for this, for these purposes, it doesn't matter what I'm putting. If I say left voicemail, next steps is to follow up, and I'll do that maybe on Friday of this week, I can still use the complete and follow on task or phone call buttons or whatever I want to use. This is kind of a hybrid, this bit, of new functionality and old functionality. It's marked the previous activity as complete and closed that down. It's taken the value that I put in the next steps of the previous activity and put it into the subject. I said that I wanted to do this on Friday, so the due date is Friday. But instead of creating the new activity silently in the background, it's opened it up for me. So if I wanted to add any more information here, I could. Personally, whilst I don't make an awful lot of calls in the line of my work, I think that if you are making a lot, probably the best thing is just to use the save and close button when you filled in the outcome, next steps and next due fields, and then just get on with the next thing. But some of you may still be quite familiar with using the complete and follow on button. If you don't fill these in, try not to confuse you here, but if instead of filling those in, you just use the old functionality, let me maybe follow on meeting in this circumstance. There we go. It's marked the previous activity as complete. And again, it's opened up the new one, but it doesn't know what else to do. It's copied the subject from the previous activity because there was no next steps. So it doesn't know what to put in the subject. So it's just always going to have the same subject. So that's exactly how complete and follow on has always worked. And that will still work. But if you use the new fields and use complete and follow on, you'll get some of the benefit of the new fields, but the new activity will open on your screen. If you just use save and close, then you'll get the new activity created, but it will be created silently in the background. So hopefully those three things make sense. Oh, I've got a question here saying, how do I switch on the outcome and next steps options? I am a system administrator. Hi, Simone. You do it in exactly the same way as you would for any form if you want to switch on fields. I wasn't going to show it, but I will show it really quickly because maybe it's going to be helpful for some of you. So you have to be in configuration as a system admin, and then in customization, record types. And if I scroll down to tasks and go to form layouts. Now, I don't know how many form layouts you've got, Simone, or anyone else on the call. You might have many, you might have one. There's just a couple in this database. So you would have to, if you want these fields to appear on all of your form layouts, you'd have to do what I'm doing to every form layout. But if I click on this particular one, let's make that a little bit bigger. It's when you go to the fields section, and here's a tip for you, anybody that's working with form layouts, in order to find the fields easily that you want to switch on the form layout, go to the top, switch off showing groups by taking the tick out of the box, and I've got now an alphabetical list of all the fields. So for instance, if here's one, here's the next steps, they have already been switched on for me, but when you look at this, when you haven't switched them on, you'll see that they're grayed out, much like object reference and next due is actually. So if it's grayed out, click on it, put a tick in the show box, and then you have to go through deciding whereabouts on the form you want it to appear. I'm not going to go through all of those steps right now. How to switch fields on particular layouts is detailed on our knowledge base, and plus I'm actually in the process of recording some videos about how to do that, but it is described on our website, or if you get stuck, speak to support if you don't already know. Or even better, come on a system administrator training course. You'd be very welcome. And actually on that topic, we are delivering training remotely at the moment because of COVID, obviously, but we can still train you if you're looking for training. So training advert over. Hopefully that helps a little bit. And as I say, you would have to go and switch on the outcome and the next steps fields and position them where you want them on your task records. The next topic that I wanted to talk about, I mentioned that we've made it easier for you to track online activities that come from the search engines, Bing and Google. And there are 2 steps to this, one of which has already been done in this database, but I'll show you what needs to be done. So one is that you need to have marketing campaigns created to track the online activities from. So if I go into marketing campaigns, I've already done it in this database. All you need to do is create 2 campaigns. They're very imaginatively named, but you do have to get these names right. So there's Bing search and there's Google search. If I open up the Google search just as an example, you can see here, I've got the online activities tab. There's nothing there. No online activities have been linked to it. And if I go back to the main tab, I haven't done anything fancy or clever with this at all. I have simply given it a name. And it says status planned. It doesn't really matter. It's assigned to me because I created it. That's all I've done, nothing fancy at all. So I'll close that down. So that's the first thing. Make sure you've got the marketing campaign set up. And then the other thing, this can only be done by a system administrator. So if you're not one, if you're in marketing and you don't have system admin powers, speak to your system administrator. So you would go into configuration again, and it is within database settings. So database settings. Again, I'll make this bigger for you to see. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a section called Assign Common Online Activities to Marketing Campaigns. It's already been done on this database. There's a little tick in the box. We're not shipping like that. So if you want this to work, you will have to get your admin to go in and simply tick the box. It's not complicated. Just tick it and make sure you save that change and that you've got your campaigns. Now, obviously I haven't really got any real online activities, but I can kind of mock this up by creating one manually. So if I go to marketing, online activities and create a new one, and let's just say that's a web page visit, sorry. We've got somebody in this database called Alan Whitehead. So I'll say it was for him. Notice there isn't a value in the marketing campaign field on the right-hand side there. But when these visits take place, then they will have a source of either Google or Bing, and the medium will be organic. That will just happen. And if they come in with those values on them, if I click create, you'll notice that now the marketing campaign is automatically populated. It's recognized these 2 values. So if it said Bing and organic, it would be linked to the Bing search. And obviously this one's the Google search. If I go and open that campaign again, remember we just looked at it, but if I go and open it, and you can see hopefully that there is an online activity now. If I open that tab, there it is. It's the one that's just been created at around about 3:30 today for Alan Whitehead. So that will just magically happen for you once you've put those steps in place. But the important bit is that it means that you can now report on these sorts of web page visits and where they came from, importantly. The final thing that I'm going to show you within the product before I go back to the slides, it's really to do with the changes that we've made to forms. So again, let me just close everything down to clear the decks for you. If I go into my preferences, This bit isn't new, but again, lots of people don't know that you can do this. So I can get to preferences from the start button and preferences, which is fine. The other way that you can do it when you've got some desktop space showing is if you right click, there's the preference option appears. It takes you to exactly the same place. So it doesn't matter which way you do it, it's just two options there. And if I make that bigger and scroll down slightly, as long as there is a tick in the box here that says choose a look and feel, you'll be able to modify what it says next to this new field, save buttons. At the moment it says show both, and you can see at the top of the screen we can see save and close, and we can see save. But on the drop down here, there are two other options where the buttons can be combined, defaulting either to save or to save and close. So I'll default mine to save and just click save to make that change, commit that back to the database. And straight away, hopefully you'll see where there were two buttons before. Now I've just got one that says save, but there is a split button next to it. So I can save and close. That's one way of doing this, and that's absolutely fine. That's where a user can choose themselves whether to combine those buttons. If you're a system administrator, you can decide whether or not users can do that. So again, back within configuration, and this time customization and desktop preferences. You can see here, it looks exactly the same as the options on the preference screen, the save buttons. And you can see here it says combined defaulting to save and close, whereas I set my preferences to default to just save. So that's what's been set at the database level, default to save and close. But because slightly further down the screen, there's a tick in the box that says users can change their look and feel, they can in effect, they can beat you, they can top trump you by setting the things within the preferences themselves. If you don't want them to be able to do that, if you want to force whatever you've set here, then take the tick out and then they won't have any choice. But it does also mean that if you take the tick out, they can't change any of these other fields. They'll inherit everything that you've set here as well, which might be exactly what you want, but just be aware that that is the outcome, if you like. That's everything that I was going to show you in the product. So I'm going to hop back into the slides. And sorry, I'm not quite on the right one. That's the one I wanted to show you. Hopefully you can see now a slide that's about button name shortening. Fairly simple changes, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of them. We're seeing a snippet of the top of a lead record on the screen at the moment. We're seeing the pre-release version at the top and the post-release version at the bottom. So a couple of changes. What did say save and convert on the old version now just says convert. What did say send email says, if I can speak, says email rather than just send email. Similarly, this next screen is showing you some snippets at the top of an opportunity record. And if you're using multi-currency, I know a lot of you won't be, but some of you will be. If you're using multi-currency, you won't see the word currency on transaction records anymore. You'll just see the 3-digit code for the currency that applies to that record. Likewise, if you're a company that uses more than one own organization, instead of seeing the word own organization, and you can see how much space that takes up, you will just see the name of the own org. And next to that, copy document, which is a common button across all transaction records, now just says copy. But hopefully you'll agree that there's significant changes in terms of just making more space on the screen, but they're not significant in as much as they're very easy to get used to. In fact, you probably won't even notice, you'll just use them intuitively. There's been lots of changes throughout the product of those buttons. I'm not going to go through all of them with you, but you can have access to this deck if you want it after this session. And all that this is showing is the different record types. The grayed out values are what it used to say, and the black values, if you like, are the ones that's what it will say now. But you'll still get the same wording as you saw previously when you hover over the buttons, if you've got any doubt whatsoever what they do. Sticking with the theme of tidying things up, I said the email forms have been tidied up, and they have. On the left-hand side, you can see the old layout and the new one on the right-hand side. Relatively small changes, but things like the status and the created and less saved at fields have been moved out of the way so that you can focus on the important bits. Who's this email going to and who's it from and who do you want to copy it to and that kind of thing. Similarly, further down the screen, you can see the message word has been removed just to widen up that rich text editor field so that you can focus in on the message that you're sending. There's also been some changes to the buttons here. You'll see the send button, it still says send, but it's got a kind of paper aeroplane symbol now rather than the envelope. And instead of saying save as draft, it just says save, and upload attachments is just the paperclip with the word attach. But as I say, if you hover over those things, you'll still see the same words that you saw before. That was an email in draft format. If you've sent your email, again, some minor changes, but makes more space on the screen. You can see them. I don't need to go through all of those with you. The forward button has changed slightly, the reply button has changed slightly, and the fields that you see at the top of the email have changed. Probably a little bit more significantly is that bullet point across the bottom where we said inline attachments no longer show under the message body. Those of you who use emails in workbooks a lot might be familiar with the fact that sometimes you see this big long list of hyperlinks underneath the email and you click on it trying to find the thing that somebody said they'd attached for you, and you find that you've just opened up the icon that's used for their LinkedIn link or their company logo or something like that. So those won't show in line, those pictures won't show under the message body anymore. It's only genuine attachments that will. So that should save you time when you're trying to access things that people have sent you. Moving on to form layouts. A couple of changes. It won't mean anything to those of you who don't have system admin powers, or who, even if you have, who never go in and create form layouts. But for those of you who do, it's a small thing, but it's a significant thing. We have moved the tabs, the ones that are outlined in red there, from about 2/3 of the way down the window to the top. That gives you much more space to work in. So I particularly like that one because I do this kind of thing a lot. That's one of the changes. The other is that if you, as an administrator, want to set a default size for the form when a user loads it, then you can do so. You simply put a tick in the box, the checkbox towards the bottom there, set default window size, and specify the width and height that you want it to appear as. On the right-hand side, you'll see some info text, which will tell you what the minimum dimensions are that you can use for this particular form layout. And if you try to exceed the maximum ones, then you will get a little red warning message saying, no, you've made it too big. So just make it smaller again. I think I mentioned in the intro, if not, I'll mention it now, that I think this will be particularly useful if you've modified form layouts where you don't have too many fields on the screen, and so you don't want lots of empty space showing, or if you're using custom records, often there's not too many fields on a custom record. This is quite a good way of just making the the form appear at just the right size. This doesn't take away a user's ability to resize that record once they've loaded it up on the screen. That's still there, quite rightly so, but it just means that you can set them off in the right direction. And then finally, I mentioned this in the intro, you can, if you're using different records that use members, you can create different form layouts for those members. So on the left-hand side there, a form layout, a simple form layout has been set up for an event attendee. And you can see that it's got not just the status field, but it's also got dietary requirements. You know, if you've got people coming for an event, you may need to know that kind of thing, and information about the speaker. Whereas the little screenshot on the right-hand side is a form layout just showing a mailing list member, because all we really need to know is which mailing list is it and are they subscribed or not. And actually what I did before I took that screenshot on the right was I modified the size of the form. Because I only had those two fields, I didn't need the form to be very high. I haven't resized that on my screen. I literally just took a screen grab of it. So that's just one example of managing a form size, really. So to recap, there's been a number of desktop improvements, including that new Manage Windows button and the ability to snap windows to the left or the right of the screen so that you can organize yourself a bit better, as well as the ability to save space by hiding the menus on landing pages and on dashboards if you choose to. We've had a look at the outcome and next steps on activities. So if you want to try out the new way of tracking these, make sure that your system administrator adds the fields to your task layout. And as I mentioned, you might want to review the pick list options to make sure that they suit your business. Once you've done all of that and started using the activities, you might also want to build some reports to track the outcome. And you could start to do clever things like tracking what the outcomes of calls are when they're made on a Monday compared with a Tuesday, or a Monday morning compared with a Monday afternoon, that kind of thing. So it's taken things on a few steps really, but it's worth considering, particularly if you've got people who are making a high cadence of calls. In terms of marketing, remember, if you want to be able to track that people have come to you directly from Google or from Bing, create your 2 marketing campaigns, Google search or Bing search. Just make sure they're named that, and make sure that your system administrator has put a tick in the box to automatically link the online activities, and then they'll just start coming in and you'll see them against those campaigns. And in terms of the forms, you can save space on records. You can combine the save and close buttons if you choose to. You can either do that at a database level and apply that to all users, or you can let your users decide. If you're going to do the latter, let your users decide, then make sure that the users in your organization even know it's possible, because they might not have gone and explored and then might not be on this webinar. So make sure that people know it's possible. We've shortened button names throughout the product, and we've made the email form much tidier, much neater. As you've seen, you can set the default height and width of forms, and now there is the ability to create different form layouts for different member types within the system. That was all that I was going to cover. I won't quite say thank you for your time just yet, because what I do want to do is just open up the floor and ask if there are any questions about anything that I've covered, or anything that maybe you thought I was going to cover and I haven't. I'll do my best to answer that. If there are any questions, just pop them in the question area. You're welcome, Lorraine. Lorraine says it's helpful, so I'm glad. Okay. If anybody's still typing a question, feel free to carry on, but it doesn't look like there's a lot of questions coming in. As always, I do encourage you to go to our knowledge base for information on these new additions or workbooks in general. Remember, anywhere in workbooks that you see a question mark symbol, if you click on it, you'll be taken to our knowledge base to contextually relevant parts of that knowledge base. So if you're on an activity and you click on the question mark, you'll be taken to information about activities. So do go and explore. Have a look at our videos as well, which you will find, I should have put it on here, but you'll find them at workbooks.com/training. You'll find a load of videos in there. And of course, if you do get stuck, if you're a system administrator, you can log support tickets with our team using support@workbooks.com. For now, however, I'm going to say thank you all very much for attending. I hope you do manage to make good use of the new functionality, and we'd love to hear your feedback. So do let us know how you get on. But for now, thanks everybody, and bye-bye.